think I'm never 100% sure when exactly the live stream starts, but I think it's when that happens, and that's where I'm always kind of doing this song and dance here. But for the most part, I'm believing that it's now. So no time like the present, sitting here in our little podcast booth. I guess we're calling it the hot mic. Let's talk, or podcast arena. I don't know. Maybe that sounds more like a wrestling thing.
Well, for those who can't see it, it does feel like we're in a hockey penalty box.
Yeah. We haven't done anything wrong that I know of yet.
We're working on it, and we've got Tim Sendel back here to help us do something wrong.
Yeah.
If he can.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thanks a lot. No, that's right.
We didn't warn you. Your role is to be, the enforcer,
Tim, you
right?
did not read the fine print. did you?
No, I obviously didn't.
No, you did not. Well, thank you again for listening here live, and to our listeners here in a couple months when this goes live on the Wildfire Chronicles podcast. Kevin Sofin and Eric Litzenberg back here, tech advisor with IFC. Pass it to Eric and to do an intro for you, Tim, and Eric, a little background on you.
Yep. Eric Litzenberg. I come from Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I was in local fire response, and now I'm the senior wildland fire advisor for IFC. Part of what I get to do is this podcast with Kevin, which we just talked about. We don't know what the name of it is, but it falls under the Wildfire Chronicles somewhere. And part of the excitement of what I get to do is working with people like Chief Sendelback.
Yes.
I'm going to get it right. I'm German. I should know how to say this.
Way worse.
Yeah, I'll bet. And we have met in the last year because we do some work together around academia. But you are of great interest to us because you've got a pretty amazing background. And Tim, we would love to hear for you to introduce yourself, including how you got to where you are. So yours can be a little longer than what we just did.
All right. Well, fair enough. Well, Kevin, Eric, I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, you're right. My career has been very non-traditional. I have been afforded the opportunity to work across 7 different states at the chief level. So that in and of itself gives me a unique perspective. I tell this story, and somebody said I talk about my travels because I was with both Firehouse and Fire Rescue as the editor-in-chief. And I was traveling when I was the editor-in-chief of Firehouse. I was traveling 254,000 domestic miles a year.
Wow.
So I was literally on the road almost every day. And I told that story, and a young kid said, "Man, you must be important." I said, "No, I'm single." And I'll be single the rest of my life if I continue that. But what was so interesting about my career is I came through multiple different departments, served in every rank. But having the opportunity to go to different organizations and see different viewpoints and different configurations, I think has made me much more well-rounded. And I'm very proud of that. And then to go into the arena of the media world, that private sector, I think that really taught me the value of truly politics and really the competitive side of the corporate world. Red and black is very different in the corporate world versus basically the government sector.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a great career. I'm honored to be the fire chief in Loveland, Colorado. Just a super organization. I tell everybody that I pinch myself every day to be able to work for Loveland Fire Rescue Authority. Just good people who appreciate a fire chief that will push them out of their comfort zone. Probably not as much as I push them, but they're just good guys and gals.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd imagine, honestly, the guys and gals, the feedback that we get from Loveland is that they pinch themselves. They've got a leader like you. So I'll bet this is mutual. What is it? Describe the organization a little bit and what it is that makes Loveland great.
Sure. Loveland's 40 miles north of Denver geographically. So it's in northern Colorado. We're right at the foothills. So it is a incredibly diverse organization in the fact that 10 fire stations, 150 personnel. We have 15 volunteers who primarily serve in 2 wildland stations. And literally that's what we focus on is getting a quick spot on the fire, letting us know when the cavalry's coming from the city. And so organizationally, 10 stations, 150 personnel, basically runs the gamut. We have our own airport, we have an urban downtown, suburban, and then probably a wildland urban interface just as challenging as anybody's. So.
Is this the first department you've worked for that has a developed wildland division, is sort of accepting wildland as part of its core function?
I will say that very much so. I mean,
Yeah.
my transition, I went through North Las Vegas, and in Las Vegas, I spent some time out there. So I tell the story, the mountains are beautiful there, but they're brown. So when I go to Colorado, they're green and they burn. So coming into Loveland, the reality was incredible organization from a response perspective, locally, county level and state level, very effective. What we hadn't been doing is focusing on the preventative work, the front end work. And my firm belief now, coming in as the chief and assessing the risk that I was now responsible for, was the importance of we got to win the battle before the battle starts. If we don't do the mitigation work, we don't do the public education and outreach, we're not going to win. We're going to try to control it as best we can. We got good resources to do that, but it's a steep hill to climb.
Yeah. How do you, so as a chief coming into an organization like that, starting to embrace the battle before the battle, that is mitigation and preventiveness, preparation, that kind of stuff. How do you find the resources and expertise to do that where it might not otherwise exist? How have you been successful in starting to grow that?
Well, and I think that's where my relationship, such as a show like this, and my corporate relationship, being in the media world and traveling to all these shows and having a network, to me really set me up for success. And I'm not saying I've been ultimately successful. I hope I am at the end of the day, but the reality is it's all about relationships. I didn't have a wildland or wildfire background, and just to learn from others, Brian Fennessy, great friend of mine,
Right.
was on the editorial board. I reach out to folks like that and get advice from them, pay attention to what they're doing, relationships that you and I now have. Knowing the resources and keeping your eye on
Totally.
the ball of everybody else.
It's just like everything else, isn't it? Our business, the business of public safety, and probably honestly the business of media, and I'd love to explore that too, but it is ultimately about relationships. And if you're genuine, and if your friends call you and say, hey, I need some help, and you're actually willing to try, it's amazing what you can get back, even if you're in this, vacuum of I just don't understand. It is amazing. And I've always, you and I are both friends with Fantasy. He says the same thing about you. It's like, this guy he's there when you need him. And it is good to have a Fantasy in your back pocket.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The relationships to me, if you want to be successful as a fire chief, you got to have good relationships, because you weren't hired because you were the smartest guy in the room. And you don't have all the answers, but if you have that network of friends that you can reach out to and experts in the field, you become the smartest guy in the room, or perceived to be the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
So it's been good.
So you said, and interrupt me anytime, Kevin, but you said, I think, was it 7 states that you worked in as a fire chief?
Yeah.
And then you've
As a
worked
chief officer.
as a chief
Yeah,
officer,
yeah.
and then you've worked in media, in international media, magazines, and whatever other media that has been seen and listened to and learned from across the world. How have you seen an evolution in the wildland space and how we're addressing it as a profession?
Evolution from what perspective? I mean, now I think it's being highlighted much more.
Uh-huh.
I've said this for a long time, and I don't want anybody to take offense to this. Our concentration as the American Fire Service has been pretty much specific to the East Coast, because we have the New York Cities, the Chicagos, and those folks focus more on the East Side. That's where a lot of our tactics and conversations and conferences are all built around. And while that has been beneficial, the attention now is looking west, because what's burning? The West and the Midwest is burning, and it's not a house or 2 houses, it's hundreds of houses, and quite frankly, communities. So to me, that's where I've said, hey, we got to balance the fire service. The structural component, the East Coast component, critical, absolutely critical. There's a lot of firefighters there, but there's a whole nother aspect that we haven't been in tune to at the level we should. And I think it's starting to come around, because now everybody knows what WUI is and everybody's having that conversation, but we're definitely having to play catch up as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's exactly the perspective I was hoping for. And I'm going to take a total. This is like a go off in the middle of nowhere thing, but you were talking about pushing your folks out of their comfort zone as a way to get growth. And I'm interested in you as a leader, and I know this about you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I know you're also an accomplished triathlete. What are the parallels between pushing yourself sort of physically out of your comfort zone and getting growth there, and then what you can do with an organization or yourself as a leader. I know it's a tough question, but
Oh, I think every facet of life, growth comes with a little bit of discomfort. You know, status quo is straight up the middle every single time. It's predictable. It becomes mundane. It becomes boring. You start to struggle with morale issues. But when you're pushing the envelope and making people respectfully feel uncomfortable, they appreciate that challenge at the end of the day. Work has now meant something to them versus that mundane task of putting the widget together. They don't do that.
right.
So I think every facet, whether our physical health, mental health, or our work health, is all about pushing the envelope. And I think as a public servant, that's what we're supposed to do. We should never be overly reliant on what we've done in the past. Our successes are also our biggest enemy because we get comfortable. And in this business, and I'll use research, the fire service research. I have said this very often that UL has been said to have changed the American fire service. And I will argue against that with all due respect to UL, Dan, Steve, all the researchers. They've educated the willing. And the problem is the willing is a small pocket of people. We need to expand that. Research needs to change the fire service globally, so our tactics are refined and our outcomes are increased as far as efficiency and effectiveness. So
That's some pretty high level thinking. I mean, this is a tough question, but how do we do what you just described? How do we move the non-willing, as it were?
I think that's a challenge when we go to some of these trade shows. I mean, a lot of times we are speaking in this echo chamber where everyone here,
Right.
for the most part, agrees with most things what everyone is saying, but getting the John Doe outside of the people out of the show and getting the unwilling.
Yeah.
That's it.
Is it just a persistence thing, you think? Or
no, I think first of all, the leader has to exemplify what they're asking others to. You've got to set the example. And hey, we hear that all the time, but you truly got to walk the walk, and it's got to be painful for you every time or every once in a while as well. You can't be the one inflicting pain all the time. You've got to be a recipient of that. Saying, hey, this is outside my comfort zone. And part of that is you got to admit it. You got to be open and willing to admit it in front of them to say it's okay. But at the same time, and I'll say something, I know this is a PG podcast, but you gotta piss people off at a rate they can absorb as well. I mean,
Right.
that is the art of leadership, is knowing there's an accelerator and there's a brake. Early on in my career, all of us were invincible. We're hard charging 100 miles a minute. Now what we got to do is learn that we got to tap that brake every once in a while. You can push too hard, and that's when you become the divisive leader. And I think that's what I've learned. And I'll tell you, I've got road rash to prove it, that I knew where the accelerator was, but I didn't know where the brake pedal is. And
Yeah.
I think now I'm starting to find that balance. And when you look at that, you have those folks that are a little less motivated. You got to push them a little bit harder, and you got to have those hard conversations, but it begins with transparency.
Yeah.
You as a leader,
Yeah.
saying it hurts me too.
Tim, something you mentioned earlier in your kind of background and then now in roles in fire service is just the business side of the house. And in business, we hear this term KPI, key performance indicators, and you're based on, did you hit your numbers this month? You know, have you done this amount of this number of this many tasks? And there's a mentor friend of mine, his name's Stefan Truthin. He's a chief technology officer for the Berlin Fire Department. And he's always talks about the goal is 0 calls. The goal is that the truck, the garage doors never go open. Of course, that's almost impossible, but the goal is 0 responses through the best community risk reduction and prevention. But I know a lot of the different responses and the ways that departments are funded is in regards to how many calls did you go on last month? You know, how many service calls, and how many acres of land have you guys the prescribed burns on? And granted, there's a lot of this different prevention work that is, to me, should be quantified. But this idea of how fire department members are funded in regards to how many calls you went on, and thinking of this business side where, hey, you must perform this many actions. My question is just like, the best disaster is the one that never happens. And how do we continue to encourage no disasters happening and incentivizing and rewarding departments with the business side of the fact that nothing happened, but nothing happened because a lot of work went into it. It's just that some of the quantification and metrics right now maybe aren't aligned.
Yeah, I think we need to re-gear the system. You don't sell insurance on the frequency of events. You sell it on the basis of risk. And the fire service is nothing more than an insurance policy. So you don't pay me for the number of responses I go on. You pay me for what I may have to do. And we build fire stations for what we may have to protect. So I think really digging deep into the risk assessment and knowing truly what we're there to protect and building a system that prevents that incident from occurring. That's what we're supposed to do. I think it is an over reliance in, quite frankly, I think when you focus on the number of calls, you're doing yourself an injustice. That's not the way you build an organization. I'll speak this, and I got a budget meeting this afternoon. I work for a system that was built on call volume. So the financial divide between the two financial contributors, I got a rural district and I got a municipality that make up my budget, 80-20. Said, how did that equation come up? That's what the IGA has written. 80% of my budget is provided by the municipality. 20% is by the rural district. Well, it was call volume. Well, it's a horrible way to do that, right? Is you're continuously looking at calls. So I have let's just say she's a platinum customer. Okay, 53 calls so far this year. So what is she doing?
New term, platinum customer.
Yeah, she's skewing the statistics. And now they're having to pay more based on one customer versus a rural call where you have to go up into the mountainous region. That call could take you hours. But yet the calls are equal as far as the cost value, and that's not right. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to re-gear that, especially with the renewed focus on data. We just got to look at it differently.
Yeah,
I know it's a long-winded answer.
no, it's great.
Question. So
Yeah, it's great. Sort of building from that a little bit and going back to the earlier way you had described Loveland, the organization. You're talking about the battle before the battle before you can't win it unless you're doing the stuff before the call actually happens, which is sort of a hard thing to prove value of at times, the value of something that doesn't happen. But what is it that you guys are doing in Loveland that you're finding to be successful?
So anytime you have an incident, obviously it kicks it into high gear. So prior to last year, we had Alexander Mountain Fire was 10,000 acres, right at 10,000, 9,600 acres, 29 homes, 20 outbuildings, draws a lot of attention. But prior to that, and this is what brings great pride to me, we had the foresight to bring on a seasonal mitigation team. It's a 4-person team with a supervisor, not a big team. Okay. It's our first toe in the water. Okay. But since we now have slash bins that we'll take into the community and amplify the workforce. So we can't do all the mitigation work, drop the slash bins, let them contribute to it. Now that they got to take ownership of the appliances that we find in there. Okay.
Right.
Take the appliances out. We want slash in there and we'll haul it off for free. But what we found is because there's been smoke in the air. I mean, we're the recipient of the largest wildfire in Colorado history. 208,000 acres was Cameron Peak in 2020. We followed that up with East Troublesome, same year. Now the Alexander Mountain. We've got a lot of attention on wildfire. So that has been helpful. I mean, disturbing on one side, but incredibly helpful to keep the public awareness. They don't let it get in a rear view mirror. So when we go out there and engage in the community and tell them, you've got to help us amplify this workforce because we can't win once there's smoke in the air. We can do our best to control it, but there is going to be loss. So I think it's literally, you got to meet with the people. You got to get down at their level and say, do you think I can get a fire truck up this street? And do you think I can save your home with all of this all the way around it? I want you to live comfortably in a lifestyle of your choosing in the mountains, but you got to help. You got to help.
Yeah.
And guess what? If Tony and Sarah, who are your neighbors, are not buying into this, we're losing that battle as well. So we all got to be in it together.
I'm always intrigued at that concept of where your weakest link is your one neighbor that maybe is indeed not following the home hardening procedures, and your neighborhood is only as strong as your weakest link. And if you have, and then that kind of comes in with like these different state and local policies. And I've been working closely with Daniel McNutt, the CRR head at Boulder County, and they're doing a lot, being very proactive and working with just the different community members and creating various incentives to encourage people to actually do the hard work. And again, it's a bunch of little things, in my understanding, with home hardening, but that if your entire neighborhood doesn't follow the home hardening protocols, then you know, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And it does seem like there's this recency effect within wildland and WUI environments where fire happens either at the neighborhood next door or it's your neighborhood and it, you know, rebuild and you forget about it for 15 years. But it seems like it's a lot of these little boring things that actually work, where you're only as strong as your weakest link. How have you encountered that or addressed that or continue to work with the communities, like you said, to, hey, Nancy and Tom in the neighborhood, work with me?
Yeah. So I should have mentioned, really our starting point was the CWPP, having a formalized community wildfire protection plan. I talk about it being kind of our playbook. It takes the emotionally passionate fire chief out of the picture and says, we don't do this subjectively. We prioritize what the CWPP says is our high risk areas. So that's where we focus our mitigation. That's how we tell the story to the community. The other side of this is adopt a WUI code. Before we had a state WUI code, we're now being imposed with a state WUI code, which we're happy with, but we're ahead of the game. We already did it. We divided our community basically on a north and south border and said anything west of Wilson is our WUI, and you will build to a different standard. Your landscaping will look differently. I think you got to use every tool that's in the toolbox, and you got to use the political system to your benefit. And sitting on the sidelines griping about politics and griping about financial funding is not how you win the game. You don't win the game on the sidelines. You win it by being engaged and part of the system.
Yeah.
So.
And what you just described, excuse me, takes a lot of social equity and a lot of leadership equity. It goes back to the relationships piece that you've said, you know, and we pretty much talk about in every one of these, Kevin, to some degree, where everybody who's good at this knows they can't do it alone. And so it brings me back to the leadership piece, Tim. I know you described chief officer in 7 departments, and you have had worldwide leadership through your editor-in-chief job, through your media stuff. I know honestly, decades. I'm not just blowing smoke here, but I've really admired you as a leader. And you have something that you've really shared with people. So what is a leadership lesson from this that you would just briefly say to all you future leaders here? You know, here's what I've learned that can help you be successful. What's one of those?
I say this very often, and I say it because I've seen it coming up through my career, is politics is not the enemy. Is what we have to do is get away from firefighters believing or being taught that politics is bad. We look at some of the things that happen at the federal level and everything else, and we frown upon being a politician. If you wear a badge, you wear a patch, you are a political official for your organization. And politics is not bad. It's 3 things. It's communicating, it's relationships, and it's influencing behavior, a vote. And that's all politics is. In order for us to be adequately funded, in order for us to adopt a code, in order for us to have XYZ staffing, it's all about playing the political system and being engaged in it. So if I could share anything that I've learned in my time as a fire chief is politics is the name of the game, and you got to be a participant.
Politics is not a bad word. That's the Kevin, do you have anything else? Yep.
Before we go to your final question, I've asked as Katie, and I'm always intrigued at someone like you that's truly a practitioner that's worked your way up in the fire service, and as you're approaching all these different fire service challenges, particularly within the wild and the WUI, is the role of technology. Of course, XPRI is very popular right now, and hopefully it continues to have very positive ramifications. But whether it's the use of satellite for early detection, whether it's use of drones for autonomous response, or it's different types of software, hardware, are there any technology trends that you're seeing that are making an impact today, or something that you're really excited about in the next 5-10 years that can really be a force multiplier?
Yeah, you're catching me flat-footed on that one. I think anything that's supporting situational awareness and early detection, those 2 technologies are going to pay high dividends. We all want to go to a good fire, but the early detection in the wildfire arena is absolutely critical for us to have a fighting chance. We've got to do front end work and early detection. So, that's where I would go. I think the drones, I've always been fascinated by that. A fire looks totally different when you can see it from above, and the situational awareness that it brings is phenomenal. And I just don't know why we're not adopting that and implementing it more often.
Anything that can give us better information quicker is the way of the future. Huh?
Not to mention real time, right? Real time. You don't have to react. It's right there.
Yeah. It's hard not to honestly be supportive of these technologies, but
it does it comes down to the practicality, scalability, and affordability. They all sound good, but then again, if it's just gonna look good on paper and not actually be usable during a live event, then it's just a flashy thing on the show floor of
Yeah.
FRI.
But I would challenge you to first and foremost look in the mirror and say, what have you prioritized within your budget? I think if we look at our budget, some of those flashy things that we've bought in the past, why did we do it? Versus something that's truly going to advance safety and effectiveness to the level that a drone could.
Yeah.
I think we can find the money.
Yeah.
We always use money as an excuse. It doesn't have to be the grandiose drone. I mean, just any type of awareness from the sky is pretty good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd imagine, Tim, with the enthusiasm that you preach for your people, that you're always prioritizing getting them the resources they need, whether it's for home or whether it's for work.
Yeah.
And that to me is, a hallmark of good leaders.
Appreciate that.
All right. So the last Gucci question, what makes you the most proud, whether it's personal, professional, doesn't matter. Of what are you the most proud?
I said is my top priority is taking care of our people. And I think every fire chief starts their career off or takes the position of fire chief saying that, but to get that feedback from the troops, chief, we got your back. We appreciate what you're doing. It's not said often. It doesn't have to be said often, but that one firefighter who takes the time and just says thank you. That's what I work for every single day. Every single day, to know that they're going home safe, they're feeling good about their job. To me, that's the most rewarding. So
yeah, I'll say it again, hallmark of a good leader. And we appreciate you being here, Chief, and sharing with your experience over many states through media and now an emerging wildland program. You're impressive, and
well,
happy you joined us.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you both.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.